Our criminal law expert Ian Allis joins us now to unpack part of what happened in court today. Ian, of course, for the first time, at least in the image of the public, we're able to have a better sense of what may have happened on the night that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. Your take and impression so far of this witness?
Good afternoon, Kathy, and good afternoon to the viewers as well. I'd say it was, so far, probably one of the better days that the state has in actual fact had with regards to the running and the consistency and the testimony. Is listening to the testimony of the witness. It opened up a few different doors of explanation of what was in actual fact taking place, and it's giving a lot more clarity to the court exactly to that incident at hand, which isn't quite, which differs considerably upon the approach that's and the versions that have been tendered so far, and taking out of effect just the technical aspects of it and the investigation to actually give some idea as to the chain of events and what took place after with both the murder itself and post the murder and the investigation from a non-technical point of view.
I suppose in many ways the evidence that is given by somebody who was a close friend of Senzo Meyiwa has not only helped in terms of humanizing him, because for a long time the story has been about headlines and all sorts of speculation, but also to humanize many of the people that were in the house at the time that this has happened.
That's correct. Well, that is basically also what testimony is there for, is to actually explain what the events, it's not what one sees in the movies of just an investigation. There's people's lives at stake, good, bad, or indifferent. And the fact is that a man lost his life on this, and one must get to the understanding of exactly what happened. And realistically, whether the accused, and I can't pass any judgment of saying whether they are guilty or not guilty, that the truth has got to come out. And if they are guilty of the crimes, then they've got to hear the versions that explain how come they are guilty and what ties them into the crime itself.
One of the things that, from a technical aspect, of course, will be important for this case is the scene that he describes at the house where this killing took place, when they had returned from the hospital, that it was packed with all sorts of people. I wonder if this doesn't have to do also with why then there's been such difficulty on the part of the state's police witnesses in being able to speak about what they did on the scene and how they were able to cordon it off, or the fact that they weren't able to do that.
The problem that actually happens with a lot of these high-profile matters is, at what stage does the human aspect actually get lost? And the problem is that you could see there were a lot of issues that came into play, obviously due to the high-profile nature of Mr. Meyiwa, as well as of Kelly Khumalo, and that did have an impact. There's no doubt about it with regards to the police investigations, that there was more people than that needed to actually be there. And as I've said before in the previous interview, is you can actually imagine how badly this would have gone as soon as everybody started hearing and wanting to come in and see for themselves. That, unfortunately, is an all too familiar aspect when one deals with high-profile, especially high-profile murder cases.
Let's talk about the aspect of the Mulbarton house. This is not where the crime had taken place. Anything suspect as far as you can tell so far about the fact that Kelly Khumalo did not want police officers gaining access to that property?
Well, it might be a bit premature, but things are not looking very good for Kelly Khumalo, and especially with regards to any potential charges from obstruction of justice or defeating the ends of justice as people understand it. Her actions do create a lot of suspicion. Now, you can't say whether or not it wasn't out of grief or shock or trauma or whatever the other aspects may well be. But the one thing is, it certainly makes her conduct look very unobliging, very uncooperative, and that she's looking to hide something, which unfortunately has been alluded to by the defense. It's also been brought in by other involved third parties, such as AfroForum, and unfortunately it's not looking particularly rosy from her, from a credibility side, especially if down the line she needs to testify.
If we take a look at what happened just in the hours following the killing of Reeva Steenkamp, certainly there were lots of directives that were issued to the security estate where Oscar Pistorius stayed in. A lot of it had to do with the fact that there was mistrust about who the police were with and the kind of access that journalists sometimes have to police officers.
That's unfortunately not becoming more and more prevalent in our new technological age. Obviously, the press has got a lot more contacts and a lot more abilities, and there's ways on how one can digitally transfer files and take photos and access a crime. And if they access a crime scene, who knows what evidence can in actual fact be obtained through members of the press having access. So there is an extra necessity that one needs to go ahead and lock down a crime scene from the general public, from the media, and that the police involvement be limited to the extent of the desired number of police in their ranks. You can't have also 75 police officials going through a house and trampling over what's called the crime scene grid. That's also realistically going to create complications for anybody with their case, high profile or low profile. It's just with the high profile cases where there's so much media involvement and so much curiosity and interest that it just heightens the ante, if one could say that, and heightens the curiosity of what really happened.
Criminal law expert Allis, let's leave it there for tonight.